Toyota pretty much put hybrids on the map, and now something like half its sales in Canada are electrified. And you know, the Prius is probably the first one that comes to mind, but the gas-electric version of the RAV4 has made a pretty solid name for itself over the years.
And whether it's fair or not, at least part of that reputation is for being kind of boring. But there is some good news because the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid looks a lot more stylish, but takes its best parts from none other than Toyota. Plus, it has that distinct drivability, all without sacrificing efficiency.
That's all well and good, but when it comes to the stuff that makes a great compact crossover, there's a reason the RAV4 reigns supreme. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Okay, Jody, 2025 Mazda CX-50 Hybrid, which virtually underneath is a carbon copy of the vehicle that you're driving this week.
Yeah, so you know it's going to be good, especially when it comes to the hybrid parts.
So it's a 2.5-liter four-cylinder. It's got dual motor generators under the hood and then a separate electric motor in the back, which is what gives it all-wheel drive.
So horsepower, we're talking 219. In the RAV4, it doesn't feel very fast, but how does it feel here?
I think it feels a little punchier. The interesting thing is there is no eco mode here, which is a little odd to me, at least on the surface for a hybrid, because you know they're supposed to be all about efficiency. The fact that Mazda didn't include an eco mode is a little bit of a letdown, but it also means that when you get your foot into this, it feels pretty good.
That's not bad.
And it also doesn't sound as strained as it does in the RAV4.
That's a really good point, because in the RAV4, I feel like that engine is working so hard and it really makes it makes so much noise.
Especially in eco mode. But on the flip side, that's how you save fuel. That RAV4 that you're driving is good for 6 liters per 100 kilometers combined. This thing is good for 6.2, which isn't that bad, but this week, it's been doing quite a bit worse. I'm up above 7. Yes, we've had a ton of snow, whereas you were still below 7 this week.
I was at 6.9, but I did want to point out that a couple years ago when I drove almost the exact same hybrid RAV4, I was getting like 5.7 without even trying.
But that was in the summertime,
It was
right?
in the summertime and on summer tires, so it's obviously going to be a little bit different in the winter, but that is so impressive.
And even still, when you consider that it's, you know, less than a liter per 100 kilometers worse in real world testing than its official numbers in this frigidly cold, crazy snowstorm that we've had this week, that's really good. This being above 7 disappoints me at least a little bit. Now, here's something about the CX-50 Hybrid that stands out to me. Stiff ride, we're going over some bumps, and right away, you can feel it. I'm sure you guys can see it on camera, just how much the vehicle moves around. It's a little more responsive. The handling is better, I think, but does that really matter in a crossover like this?
I think for most people it doesn't. Like if you're obviously a driving enthusiast and you like driving, then sure, you might want to aim towards something that is a bit sportier. I personally don't really care in a vehicle like this. What I want is efficiency.
Absolutely, and that's the thing for me is I know Mazda has always kind of hung its hat on this, you know, sporty driver engagement, this very driver-focused vehicle. But in something like this, I just don't care. Give me the efficiency and also give me the space.
So we're in the RAV4 now, and part of the reason why I like it so much better is that no, it doesn't drive as nicely as the CX-50, but it's so much more relaxed and it ends up being so much more comfortable.
Yeah, and it's definitely more compliant, and I know that some people are going to take that as a criticism. I don't think that's true. Again, in a crossover like this, I don't want something sporty and engaging. I want something that's easy to drive, that's mellow, that soaks up bumps. Now, yes, the wheels are a little smaller, the sidewall of the tire is a little bit thicker. That definitely helps matters here, but even still, just generally, we've driven them, you know, with the same size wheels, smaller wheels, bigger wheels, it doesn't matter. The Mazda isn't quite as nice out on the road as the RAV4.
But that doesn't mean it's also not bad. Like, I don't mind the way the RAV4 drives at all. I just think it's for different people, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing we should talk a little bit about that kind of goes part and parcel, space. Now, we're going to get more into that a little bit later on. A couple nuances, though, that I do want to touch on. The CX-50's doors open way wider, both front and back, than the ones here. And that to me is a big problem, especially if you've got little ones and you want to load them into car seats or get them out, help with a buckle, whatever you've got to do. The fact that the doors on this don't open very wide is very frustrating.
It is frustrating, but I feel like otherwise, RAV4 has the practicality part nailed.
Yes,
I love there's all
absolutely.
these cubbies in here, everything's well labeled. I also really like this infotainment system. I prefer it way much over the CX-50s.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it has a touchscreen. It doesn't have a little knob, but I find the touchscreen very, very easy to use. They've added in a great row of shortcuts now, which they didn't used to have before, so that makes it even more user-friendly. There's big chunky knobs and buttons that are very clearly labeled. In general, it's super user-friendly, and there's basically no learning curve.
My only counterpoint is this infotainment system is very basic.
It is basic. Like, it's not exciting, it doesn't look fun, but it does the job, and that's basically the whole RAV4's story in general. So this CX-50's infotainment system is not exciting, but it is aggravating.
Now guys, here is the thing. I know some of you out there still want to tell us that using this rotary dial on the console is just as easy as tapping a touchscreen. We're both here to tell you that that is not the case. Now, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, yes, you can still use the touchscreen. That is very cool, very handy, but the fact that Mazda is so dead set on this console controller is just beyond me.
I just find the whole thing very unuser friendly, and it also doesn't help that I can't touch this screen while I'm driving.
It is very far away.
It's too far for me, so then it becomes absolutely useless.
And here's the thing, every time people tell me, oh, it's fine, oh, it's second nature, it doesn't take long to get used to, I'm like, okay, here's a quick test. Use the direct tune feature in the radio. Let's say you want to, tune over to a radio station. You have to move the scroll wheel, you have to go to the direct tune, and then you spin it, and it's like an old rotary dial phone. It is just so frustrating. I don't understand why this is the way that Mazda wants to do things, but hey, I'm not in charge over there, and I'm telling you right now, there are enough people out there who are going to be frustrated by this system, and it's going to put them off of the CX-50 and maybe put them on to the RAV4.
This is almost a little deal breaker for me. I hate it.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. You know, otherwise, I like the fact that there are physical climate controls in here. And the other thing I have to say, the voice recognition system in this is very good. So you can tell it, hey, tune to, whatever, lithium radio, and it will do that on the satellite radio feed. So that part is cool. But, and I mentioned this in my individual review, somebody with a speech impediment or a very thick accent, they are going to struggle with that voice recognition. That's not fair. And that means it's not universally accessible.
That is a very good point. I also wanted to point out that I always feel incredibly awkward using voice controls if someone else is in the car.
Yeah, and the other thing is the voice control system doesn't really work for the passenger. Like, sure, you could shout across, but the microphone is picking up this half of the vehicle, so it really is frustrating to try to use this when you're sitting in that passenger seat as opposed to just tapping a touchscreen a few times.
So are you finding this comfortable? I feel like you have a lot of room in here.
Yeah, it's really interesting because in the Toyota, which is kind of bigger, it's taller, the front seat headroom has always been a problem, especially with the sunroof. Whereas in here, I sit a little bit lower, so I have a ton of space. I feel really good in the front half of the CX-50, which isn't the case in the RAV4, but then the back seat is a different story altogether. All right, you guys have seen enough of these two by now to notice that their footprints are pretty similar, but there's just way more usable space inside the RAV4. That's true of the passenger area as well as the cargo room. Behind the back seats, you get 200 liters more space than you do in the CX-50.
And that's not to say that the CX-50 doesn't have enough space for a weekend's worth of stuff. It's just that the RAV4 has more of it. And the Mazda's biggest problem is that lower roofline, which makes it objectively more stylish. You're just gonna have to sacrifice a bit of practicality to get that.
I also have to say the extra cladding you get on the CX-50 is a nice touch. Makes it look a little more rugged, and I still love this shade of soul red paint after all these years. Although I gotta say, it really clashes with the brown leather upholstery in our tester. But on the flip side, I like that this is real leather compared to the fake stuff you get in the RAV4. Don't forget, this is the most expensive version of the RAV4 Hybrid you can buy.
Okay, so we should talk about pricing. In the cheapest version of the RAV4 Hybrid, it's about $38,500 before tax in Canada. That's something like $6,500 less than the cheapest version of the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid, the GSL.
That is a huge difference.
Now, there are some features you get there that you don't get here. One of them, the panoramic sunroof. You get heated front seats and a heated steering wheel, as well as a height programmable power tailgate. So there are some goodies, but I don't necessarily see that as $6,500 worth.
I don't think it's worth that much extra.
Okay, so then you have the Kiro edition, that's about $47,000 before tax, and then the GT version that we have, it's $51,000.
I mean, that's $1,500 more expensive than this limited version of the RAV4, but I actually think it's the CX-50 that's limited, at least in terms of usable space. To recap, we like that the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid has a distinctive driving feel, but it's sufficient like a Toyota and the way it looks. But we don't like the cramped rear seats, the relatively small cargo area, or that infotainment controller.
When it comes to the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid, we like that it's spacious for its size, predictable but in good ways, and cheaper than the CX-50. We don't like that the powertrain gets noisy, that some of the materials inside aren't all that great, and that it can be a bit boring, especially given how popular it is.
The Mazda CX-50 Hybrid definitely rides more harshly than the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid, but we still prefer its overall drivability.
And then there's the issue of the space inside these two, as well as the way it's used, which favors the RAV4. And since we aren't fence sitters here at AutoTrader, here's how we see it. If we were comparing two small and sporty crossovers, the CX-50 would probably cruise to a pretty easy victory here.
But we're not. We're comparing two small and efficient crossovers that will make sense for everything from ride sharing to family life and everything in between. And that's why the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid takes this win, because it offers the whole package.
It wasn't exactly a runaway here for the RAV4, that's for sure, but the CX-50 just can't quite keep up in the ways that matter most in this segment, including how much it'll set you back.